Hi, hello. Hola a todos. Class. Class. Are you ready? Give me a yes. Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you for coming. This is our last day for our seminar on bilingual education. We have 3 talks today, 1 workshop and 2 plenaries. And we will start with our dear friend, not only professional, but also a very dear friend to Universidad de Alcalá. Her name is Dr. Maria Luisa Pérez Cañado. She's a full professor at the Department of English Philology of the University of Jaén, Spain, where she's also rector's delegate for European University and Language Policy. Her research interests are in applied linguistics, bilingual education, and new technologies in language teaching. Her work has appeared in over 120 scholarly journals and edited volumes published by Elsevier, Peter Lang, Cambridge University Press, Multilingual Matters, Wiley Blackwell, or Springer, among others. She is also author of, or editor of 15 books on the interface of second language acquisition and second language teaching, an editor or member of the editorial board of 18 international journals. Maria Luisa has given more than 150 lectures all over the world, in Belgium, Poland, Germany, Portugal, Ireland, England, Mexico, Brazil, Peru, China, the United States, and all over Spain. She is currently coordinating the first intercollegiate MA, master's degree, in bilingual education and CLIL in Spain, as well as 4 European national and regional projects on attention to diversity in CLIL. She has also been granted the Ben Massey Award for the quality of her scholarly contributions regarding issues that make a difference in higher education. Welcome to our dear friend, Maria Luisa Pérez Cañado.
Thank you. Thank you so much, dear Angela, for such a warm and generous introduction, and a huge thank you to the organizers for this invitation. I have to say that nowhere out of all those places that Angie has mentioned am I treated more exquisitely than at the Instituto Franklin de la Universidad de Alcalá. So thank you so very much for having me and for rolling out the red carpet for us, as always. A very good afternoon to you all. It's a huge pleasure to be focusing with you today on a very hot topic on the bilingual education agenda, namely diversity, inclusion, and elitism in CLIL. Because now that bilingual programs are being mainstreamed school-wide, for example in Andalusia, where I work, we no longer have coexisting CLIL and non-CLIL branches in schools. Our schools are fully bilingual. So now that we're mainstreaming CLIL, many experts consider that this is not just a huge challenge or an increased difficulty, it could actually jeopardize everything that we have achieved so far. As one teacher that we polled in our interview said, el bilingüismo murió cuando fue para todo el mundo. Yeah? So to ensure that CLIL stays very much alive, today I would like to pursue with you 3 overarching objectives. First, I'd like to bring you the latest, freshest empirical evidence to address some of the most frequently asked questions that we have vis-a-vis elitism in CLIL. I'd also like to complement that with practical tips on the methodological front. And I'd like you to walk away also with materials, with exclusive access to materials, to guidelines, to videos, which are not actually published yet, but which I have included in an info pack, which all of you should have, and which I will provide you with a QR code to download as well later. So, this being said, by way of introduction, you know, as I was thinking about this talk and preparing it the other day, you know, I got to thinking, man, what a time to be alive. I mean, in the past year and a half, we have lived a crisis on so many levels. I mean, I'm not even going to get started with the natural disasters that we've had to wade through. Of course, we've had the biggie, COVID. But if you think about it, we've also lived a crisis on the pedagogical front, because we've had to make an emergency shift to online teaching, and that's gotten slammed. And what can I say about bilingual education? Constant articles with hundreds of schools purportedly claiming to drop out of the bilingual program. And this in turn led me to think that Spain is different. We say this here in Spain. I know a lot of you are not Spanish, but this is like a slogan that we have here for tourism. But I think it also applies well to the fact that here we don't do things halfway. If we enter into a crisis, we do it in a full-fledged way, right? And we're also different in CLIL, because you know what? On the upside, Spain has always been very conspicuous on the bilingual education map in terms of implementation, in terms of research, and now, and we should take pride in this, because we have one of the most diversity-sensitive bilingual education systems in Europe. But you guys, you know there's always a downside, right? On the downside, Spain is also conspicuous for what I call el fenómeno del cuñadismo. Now, you guys know cuñadismo in English would be something like brother-in-lawism. For all those of you who are not Spanish, let me explain this for you. Here in Spain, we have this, I don't know if it's an urban legend or a hard and fast fact, okay? But our cuñados, our brothers-in-law, they know about everything. It doesn't matter what topic you bring up over Christmas dinner, they know about it, okay? They've got an opinion and it's the right one. Exactly the same is happening with CLIL. Everybody, even if they haven't implemented it, experienced it, or researched on it, they have an opinion which they firmly believe is the right one. Now, this phenomenon, of course, has a scientific name, okay? It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Basically, the less you know about something, the more you think you know, okay? And this is spurring on a series of false myths or misconceptions which are hitting us from many different flanks. We see them in newspaper articles. We see them on blog and social media posts. We see them on the national television. In the news a few months ago, we had this piece which said that CLIL segregates and it only benefits a few, right? So just like there's a top 10 for Netflix, there's a top 10 of false myths in CLIL, and elitism is right up there at the top. And there's a real plethora of accusations besetting CLIL in this respect. It's considered an elitist nightmare, to exhibit a brutal classism, to be an excuse for segregation. So is this true? Well, this is what I would like to examine with you today by breaking down those 3 overarching goals that I mentioned into 7 sub-objectives. I'd like you to walk away with a clear concept, theoretical conceptualization of diversity, to equip you with the latest evidence to answer those haters, the uninformed cuñados, to also offer you clear-cut pedagogical strategies which stem from the best practices of others from across Europe. And I'd also like you to leave with clear-cut guidelines for materials design on this front. And all in all, for you to become acquainted with the top challenges that you and we are going to have to face up to, and hopefully to provide you with a little bit of food for thought, okay? So how am I going to do this? Well, by playing a game, the game of 20 questions. Well, we're actually only going to have time for 15, okay? But I wanted to share with you like the 15 most frequently asked questions that I've been getting in the past year and a half since the crisis started on diversity in CLIL, yeah? So after this initial introduction, we're going to go right ahead and jump right into the questions. For each one, I'm going to be doing 3 things, all right? Hopefully answering the question, okay? I'll also like to showcase, extract for you the lesson we have learned from it, the broader takeaway. And then I'm also going to go right ahead and pop in what I call real English. And it's great that I know a lot of native speakers are here, because I think you can help us actually refresh our English. This has been a personal crusade of mine. I find that a lot of teachers, including university teachers, okay, they tend to have what I call a textbookish, 19th century-ish kind of English. And you will hear, you know, constant repetitions of well done to praise their students, or está bien to scold them, or do you want to shut up for queréis callaros? So I've been trying to overcome this by providing fresh English, and you know how quickly English changes. I mean, to say something like genial, in the 50s, if you watch a Cary Grant movie, you would hear swell. In the 80s, when I was studying at the American School of The Hague, we were all going around saying, oh my God, that's so rad, from Radical. Hugh Grant popularized excellent in the 90s. And now people are going around saying, oh, that's awesome, or that's sick, or that's dope, or according to my nieces, who are my greatest source of real English, people are saying something is really lit, right? Please let me know if we have to add another one, if this is not fully updated, okay? So a lituation is a really cool situation. So I'm going to be popping in some real English expressions to overcome what I call the it's raining cats and dogs syndrome, so that we avoid wasting our precious time teaching and learning expressions which nobody ever uses, okay? And I'm going to go right ahead and circle them every time they appear. Okay, and finally, to see if you have been attentive, I will toss it back to you and ask you a few questions from the talk, see what you think, and then we'll wrap it up with the broader takeaways. All right? Sound good? Sound okay? You ready? Okay, let's hit it. Let's move on to our 15 questions. Here they are, people, on diversity. I get these a lot, okay, and I wanted to share them with you and give you a latest empirical answer. So, to use a real English expression, let's jump right into the fray. Vamos al lío directamente, yes? Let's begin with, what is diversity? I think this is the necessary starting point. What do we mean by inclusion and diversity? Because up until now, I don't know if you'll agree, we tended to associate diversity basically with special education needs, right? With students who had severe learning difficulties. But the situation has changed because now CLIL is for everyone. So we have to broaden the concept to also include different learning styles, levels, paces, and backgrounds. How can we do this? Well, we propose the DD framework, a brand new theoretical conceptualization. It's called DD because it capitalizes on the concepts of diversity, inclusion, differentiation, and integration. So diversity is like the overarching term, and it entails providing an adequate education to all students. It rests on the pillars of inclusion and differentiation, and inclusion also aims to respond to the learning needs of all students, but from an asset-based perspective. It views diversity as a source of enrichment, as an opportunity to help learners who were originally on the fringe go from being outsiders to becoming participants. And differentiation also targets diverse abilities by tailoring teaching to different intelligences and zones of proximal development. And then a conflation of the three leads to the integration of learners with different ability levels. And all four dovetail to safeguard equitable access to CLIL programs and offset the disenfranchisement of the most vulnerable and underserved learners. So bottom line, takeaway here, we now finally have a clear-cut framework that transcends, that goes beyond mere special education needs. And if any of you is interested, this framework is going to come out in a special issue of the International Journal of Bilingual Education, but I promised exclusive access, so I've included it for you as a sneak peek in your info packs, okay? So nobody has it yet except you at this point in time. Okay, so there it is. You should have it in the info pack. All right, second question, and oh my God, do I get this a lot. I mean, people tell me, okay, Marisa, we get a lot of criticism. But are critics right? Let's face it. Are they right to question inclusion policies in our bilingual programs? Well, you know what? If we think about when CLIL started, like over 20 years ago, there was overt streaming. That is, students who wanted to be part of a bilingual program needed to accredit a certain subject knowledge, language level, or both. And in countries like Spain, where we had no admission criteria, there was covert streaming through what Lorenzo et al. Termed self-selection, bolstered by social class and parental choice. So the best learners, the most intelligent, the most motivated, the most linguistically proficient would go into the CLIL group, yeah? And to top it all off, or as we say in real English, to add insult to injury, ya el colmo de lo colmo, we didn't bother to guarantee the homogeneity between the groups. We had a lack of materials and pedagogical and evaluation orientations. Teacher training needs were high, and satisfaction with the support system was low. So you know what? Yeah, critics were right to question inclusion policies because at the beginning, CLIL was elitist. And we are actually observing this in many Latin American countries implementing CLIL right now, like Brazil, Colombia, Peru. When they start out on CLIL, it's necessarily elitist. So we need to come to terms with this and give it time, okay, to take root. But to use a real English expression, what's the sitch? What's the situation right now? Has this changed 20 years after CLIL implementation? Well, to answer this question, we need to break it down into 3 sub-questions. First, are the best learners still in the CLIL group? Second, what's the possible differential effect of different variables that we associate to elitism? And third, can CLIL really work anywhere, even in the most disenfranchised settings? Let's take them one by one, shall we? First, are the best learners still in the CLIL groups? Good news, we've got a solid empirical evidence base tapping into this issue. And look at this. These authors have compared CLIL and non-CLIL students in hundreds of randomly selected schools, and absolutely no statistically significant differences have transpired. So nope, the best learners are no longer in the CLIL groups, or to put it another way, CLIL and non-CLIL learners are increasingly homogeneous. Pretty good. Second finding, what about the effect exerted by variables that we tend to associate with elitism? As you can see, we have a lot of research, particularly from the past 5 years, really solid empirical research, which has compared CLIL and non-CLIL students in different settings. Okay, take a wild guess, people. Who do you think was better, the rural or the urban group? What did I hear? Yeah, you're right, urban. Low, middle, or high socioeconomic status. We normally take the parents' educational level as a proxy, okay? Who do you think did better? You betcha. Private, public, or concertado, charter schools? Yup. Very predictable, right? But, according to the latest research from the past 5 years, this is the case only for the non-bilingual students. In the CLIL groups, bilingual programs are canceling out differences. They're acting as a leveler. And this is a clear pattern which is emerging. There's even recent research exploring why this is happening. And it's being spearheaded by Ana Halbach at the University of Alcalá. And they have found 3 main reasons behind this. First, CLIL learners have a sense of group belongingness, which makes them be more responsible. Second, they're used to having their parents not be able to help them with homework, so they're more autonomous. And third, teachers are aware of the increased cognitive challenge inherent in CLIL, so they provide more language-sensitive teaching, which makes it more accessible for everyone. So the lesson learned here, and it is such great news, is that CLIL is acting as a leveler across settings. Third question for the current situation. Can CLIL work anywhere, even in the most disenfranchised settings? I'm talking, think about this. Public, rural, high school, in a teeny tiny town, where parents have a low socioeconomic status, where there's a majority of gypsy ethnicity. This is the case of El IES Montes Orientales in Iznayoz, in Granada, which is where I live. Iznayoz is kind of like in the middle of nowhere. I got car sick going to Iznayoz. And we went into this small rural town, and we compared perfectly homogeneous CLIL and non-CLIL students. And look at this. CLIL was working magnificently. You know what? I was blown away by these kids. I mean, they were speaking English in the hallways. They carried out extremely sophisticated project work in English. They followed chemistry classes 100% in English. In fact, when I was approached by, Historias de Luz, to tape a mini documentary on the project. They said, Marisa, where you want to record this? And I immediately said, in Isnayoth, so that everyone can see how these children who would otherwise never have had the chance to learn bilingually are thriving in a CLIL scenario. If you ask me, this was probably due to the teachers. They had a C2 level, they were extremely well versed in CLIL, and they were committed to the bilingual program. And I always share, those of you who know me, a personal anecdote. Okay, this is not scientific, people, okay? It's not generalizable, but it's very illustrative. As I said before, I live in Granada. Does anyone know Granada here? Okay, awesome. Well, my gym pre-COVID is in La Chana. La Chana, socioeconomically dodgy area in Granada, okay? And right next to my gym, there's a public bilingual high school. And pre-COVID, I had to stop to take a picture. Because you know how teenagers will throw up a tag saying, Maria te quiero? Well, in La Chana, it was in English, okay? They're declaring love for each other in English in La Chana. Huge moment. So, you know what? Yes, CLIL can work. Even in La Chana, even in Isnayoth, yeah, it's affording all students what was previously only the prerogative of the elite. So now the situation is drastically different, yeah, and we can say that CLIL is not as elitist as it used to be. So we've seen the past, guys. We've seen the present. Let's look at the future, shall we? What are the main challenges that we're up against in this new scenario of making CLIL accessible to everyone? Well, we've conducted, I'll tell you about it later, 4 projects on this. Angie mentioned them. And we found that, you know, what we're currently doing right now, it ain't gonna cut it. It's not gonna work. We need to reshift our bilingual education systems. Why? Well, according to our research, because, well, we lack a clear theoretical conceptualization. We now have the DD framework, fortunately. Teachers also feel hugely daunted. I would say this is the top challenge by the lack of materials. They have to find them or adapt them or design them. This is very challenging. There are also, as yet, very vague pedagogical orientations to accommodate differentiation, and teacher training needs are high, and especially on 3 fronts, according to our results. Materials, scaffolding, and student-centered methodologies, which interestingly are precisely the 3 techniques that teachers claim to use more. So it's like they want to refine to perfection what they're already doing. And finally, there's a conspicuous lack of satisfaction with the support systems, especially in terms of teacher-student ratios, time to coordinate, and the supportive language assistance, which is why the work done here at the Franklin Institute is especially relevant. So bottom line, as I said before, we gotta re-engineer the system, right? We have to plus it up. Hay que subir de nivel. We have to course correct if we want to ensure that we keep this show on the road. But people, we're not here to complain, are we? We're not here to whine. We're here to provide solutions, right? So let's do it. What are we doing to tackle all this? Well, we're working on it through 4 different projects. All of them encompass within the ADIBE umbrella, Attention to Diversity in Bilingual Education. We've done 6 things through these projects. We've designed the DD framework I told you about. We're also determining from a quantitative standpoint the impact of CLIL on L1, L2, and content learning with 3 tiers of achievers according to the variables that you have on screen to determine whether CLIL can truly work with everyone. And qualitatively, we've identified the main difficulties, best practices, and chief training needs to step up to the challenge of diversity through questionnaires, interviews, and classroom observation. And these are going to feed into an app that we're finishing up right now so that teachers can take a personalized diagnosis on the app of their main training needs, yeah? And I've included, again, in an exclusive way, the questionnaires for you in the info pack in case you want to apply them to your own context, okay? These are fully designed, validated, and administered. And then teachers, on the basis of that diagnosis, will be redirected to a batch of original materials that we finally have to attend to diversity. These materials include what we call differentiation triangulation. What is this, right? Let me explain. We have differentiation on 3 levels. In the first level, we group learners according to same ability. They work on the same content, but with differentiated strategies according to Bloom's taxonomy. So what we call achievers needing help are probably just going to be asked to understand, and they're heavily scaffolded. Mid-level achievers will be required to evaluate, and high-level achievers have to produce something, and they can move in between the different levels in a fluid continuum. Then, in the second phase, we get them to work in different ability clusters. So they build on each other's strengths and weaknesses, and together they use differentiation of methodologies. They use cooperative learning, tasks, projects, multiple intelligences, the works, to work together to arrive at the third phase, which is the final product presentation. And here there is again differentiation, because they can choose whether to draw up an infographic, a presentation, or a video. And these materials are project-based, and they're transdisciplinary because they include the L1, the L2, and a minimum of 3 content subjects. Did you think I wasn't going to share the materials? You were wrong, okay? You've got them here. They're not printed static materials. They no longer cut it, okay? You can go right ahead and scan the QR code and access the Spanish materials. By the way, I'm also going to provide you with a PowerPoint afterwards through a QR code, so you have this QR code within the other QR code, so don't worry if you don't get it now, okay? But these are online, dynamic, interactive, and nobody has seen them yet except you, okay? Accompanying these materials, we have designed pedagogical video guides, yeah? And, well, written and also through video. In the pedagogical orientations part, we've designed what we call the ADIBE principles, which are crucial for student-centered attention to diversity. And again, I've included the principles for you in the info pack. And we've also taped what we call CLIL pills. They're kind of like TikTok videos, like 1-2 minutes long, where key figures in the field provide a very short practical answer to the key challenges that we've identified through the project. And you've got these on our YouTube channel. I'll tell you about it at the end of the presentation. Finally, we've also designed and piloted an original teacher training course. And here we encourage teachers from across Europe to take videos and to share their best practices, yeah? So bottom line, people, we are on it, okay? And I'll tell you exactly where you can access everything, in addition to the info packs, in question 15, okay? So stay tuned. So I just mentioned a second ago that we shared videos with best practices, right? Another necessary question is, what can we learn from the best practices of others? Because, you know, here in Spain especially, we do a lot of what we call navel gazing, right? Nos miramos el ombligo, yeah? We work with ourselves in our context, and right, at university especially. And we need to shift the perspective and make it more supranational, which is what we've done through ADIBE, and we've pulled the insights of experts in 6 European countries. And what have we learned? Well, we've learned something that reminds me a lot of this quote. Are you guys familiar with this quote? I use it a lot in my intercultural teaching. Like, your car is German, your vodka is Russian, your pizza is Italian, your coffee is Brazilian, and you complain that your neighbor is an immigrant? Pull yourself together. We found something very similar for attention to diversity across Europe. Our results point to the fact that if you want to learn about excellent lesson planning, you need to look at what they're doing in Finland. Austria is tops for student-centered methodologies to cater for diversity. The UK excels at materials design. Italy rocks ICT options, and we are particularly conspicuous for our assessment procedures. So bottom line, we can learn a great deal from others. So let's make sure that we stop gazing at our navel and look at the practices of others, because we can learn a great deal. Okay, let me share with you now, delving a little bit deeper into those practices, some practical, methodological, and evaluation tips to cater for diversity across Europe, okay? Because this next question I get a lot. You know, Marisa, I have students in my class who have been in CLIL programs since first grade of primary mixed in with students who come from primero de eso. What can I do? They're so heterogeneous. Let me share with you what works across Europe, okay? First, in the UK, for example, they carry out a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration, with the English subject being very important because these students have a very heterogeneous English level. So they depart from an initial test and then they work collaboratively to track progress through a sort of joint progress book. There's food for thought. Here in Spain, a lot of teachers have told us they use extramural exposure activities. As you know, here in Spain, we don't get a lot of exposure to English beyond the classroom, right? Because everything is dubbed most of the time. Now we're increasingly changing the situation, but in general, we don't subtitle. So a lot of teachers are using YouTube clips as a sort of language catch-up, assigning 10, 15-minute clips of homework to those students who need more exposure to the language. And it can be on anything, on whatever floats their boat, yeah? It can be on makeup, on cars, whatever, video games, I don't care, as long as you're getting English, yeah? A third tip is, of course, we gotta revamp our materials big time. Make sure that they're transdisciplinary, project-based, tiered level, dynamic, yeah, interactive, multimodal. We're getting there gradually. And what can I say? Scaffolding all the way with all those techniques that you guys probably know better than I do because you're at the grassroots level, both process and product oriented. Working with student-centered methodologies has been found also to be a great way to go, using projects and tasks and multiple intelligences and the multiple procedures of cooperative learning. And finally, capitalizing on different groupings has also proved fruitful. For example, using learning stations to create an inclusive atmosphere, or grouping students into same ability clusters so we can provide extra reinforcement, or mixing them up so that they can capitalize on each other's strengths and weaknesses. Yes, this is going to entail an increased workload for us, as always, right? But hey, at least, you know, the takeaway here is that we have quite a few successful tips within our reach, so give them a shot. Try them out, yeah, one by one. What can we say about evaluation? I also want you to walk away with clear-cut tips for evaluation. In the UK, for example, they don't assess on the same level. They depart from personalized objectives, and then they vary grading criteria according to different abilities. And of course, using rubrics and templates for project-based work comes in really handy, as well as self and co-assessment. It has to be said that according to our outcomes, teachers claim to use ongoing assessment techniques for diversity to a greater extent. And here, the go-to strategy is normally providing detailed guidelines as extra support, personalized and regular feedback attuned to different levels, and adapting activities both in class and for homework. We still have a ways to go in final summative assessment, but some of the techniques that teachers use include highlighting keywords in the exam or adapting its vocabulary, providing different versions, or allowing students more time to take the exam. So bottom line here, people, the one-size-fits-all model, el café para todos, it's not going to cut it. It's not going to fit the bill. We need to diversify, yeah, in terms of evaluation techniques. Okay, let's move on to two questions related to teacher training. Crucial for diversity. What we used to do is no longer fitting the bill. We need to up our game. Hay que subir de nivel and specify our training for diversity. And in this sense, according to our projects, what we need to do, ideally, is to depart from a personalized diagnosis which is relevant in our context. What's happening in Madrid in 2005 is not the same as what we need in Andalusia in 2022. We need to make sure that we depart from a diagnosis that's relevant for us. And then the ideal teacher training course would have a three-pronged structure. Little bit of theory, not a lot, okay? Teachers don't like theory a lot, but a lot of practice, methodologies and scaffolding and evaluation and groupings, and also guidelines for materials design. And this would ideally lead to tailor-made courses offered through our teacher training programs, included in our undergraduate degrees, but as we know, that's very wishful thinking here in Spain. Masters are perhaps the best way to go, like the wonderful ones that you have here, or the one that we have also at the University of Jaén, which has diversity as one specific subject. And again, ideally, All this would be made available through open educational resources for greater impact, outreach, and dissemination. Yeah. So the three-pronged model, TPM, has proved very useful to guide teachers from more control to freer practice. And if any of you is interested in the course we set up and we piloted, give me a shout and I'll be happy to share. But in addition to courses, we also need a little hand-holding, because this is tough, okay? Catering for diversity is tough for teachers. And, you know, I get the question a lot of, how can we help them cope? Well, on this front, I think the answer hinges on four main aspects. First, make teachers realize that knowledge is power. I think it empowers us to know where we can find materials and resources and pedagogical tips and training opportunities. Second, we always tell them, don't go overwhelming yourselves trying out 17 different techniques at the same time. Start small, try it, and then refine, retool, and gradually go right ahead and scale it up. Third, don't go it alone. Seek out support from your colleagues, from authorities, parents, language assistants, multi-tiered systems, because carrying the heavy load of diversity will be made a little bit lighter if you do it with other people. And finally, remember, it's all about the attitude. Just like with the COVID vaccines, remember, the benefits of CLIL far outweigh the pitfalls. So it's all about the can-do attitude, or as Dunkin' Donuts, you guys like Dunkin' Donuts? As they have put it, the can-do attitude, yeah? Because we know that the success of CLIL programs relies more than on any other factor on teachers' commitment and motivation. So you know what? We got this. Podemos con esto. People, we've set in motion CLIL. What's a little diversity, right? That's the attitude that we need to maintain. So it's on us, to use a real English expression, bring it on. A coger el toro por los cuernos, as we say in Andalusia. Okay, I'm nearing the end because I don't want to keep you past our time. But I did want to share with you, I wanted to toss in a couple of controversial questions, okay? First is there still faith in bilingual education? After all the harsh criticism that we've seen, that was on my very first PowerPoint slide, with all those blog posts and social media tweets and television, and is there still faith? What do you think? Spot on. You know, we carried out a study. You know me. I always believe in empirical evidence, not in opinions. And we carried out a study with over 2,500 respondents, and we were actually surprised because we found that teachers, although they're cognizant of the increased challenge that diversity has brought about, it's been a real curveball, they consider that they can do it. They're equipped linguistically and content-wise to try to step up to the challenge with a little training. Students, in turn, had tremendous faith in the capacity of their teachers, and hey, of all their teachers, the content, the language, and the language assistants. And parents, wow, this was the biggie. Parents had blind faith in the teachers, in the methodologies, and in the support systems. And what is distinctive about this study is that previous ones found that only parents with a low socioeconomic status had faith in CLIL. Now it's even parents with a high socioeconomic status. So hey, there's still prestige and worth attached to bilingual education. There is buy-in from the frontline stakeholders who still have to enroll their children in bilingual programs, right? So we're still in business. And final question before I give you the sources. Very controversial as well. Online learning, of course. COVID had to be in here. Has the shift to online learning prevented us from catering for diversity? Because, you know, online teaching, I don't know, in your area, in mine, oh man, it's getting slammed. It's really, really harshly being criticized. And again, we said, okay, let's approximate this from an empirical stance. We carried out a study through our Neolaya Alliance at University of Jaén, and also through the JRC report for primary and secondary. And I'm going to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, okay? I'm going to identify the pitfalls of online learning, but I'm also going to say yes, but, and identify an affordance according to research. It is true that we found that through the shift to emergency online teaching, there have been issues with adequate access to technology. But authorities are now more aware that they need to increase resources and have done so where possible. And they're also more aware that they need to invest in teacher training for digital competence. Secondly, you know this, I know this, online teaching has involved a huge workload, sometimes verging on overwhelming. As one student, Paul, at the University of Jaén said, "Yo no he trabajado más en toda mi vida de estudiante." True, but according to the European Commission report, this has forced teachers to prune curricula, to adjust them to the core. And this has made them more manageable and meaningful. So that's quite eye-opening. Third, vulnerable students have tended to get the short end of the stick because those bubble groups that we've created have aggravated issues of lack of attention to diversity. But it's also been an opportunity to experience a lower teacher-student ratio. And we have seen that this is the way to go. And this can help us provide more individualized attention. Concerns have also been voiced for the fact that when there's insufficient feedback provided online, students feel alone, right? They're left to their own devices. But you know what? On the upside, I don't know if you agree, but in my context, we tend to spoon feed our students a tad much. So this has caused them to be more autonomous and independent, right? No hay mal que por bien no venga. And finally, again, there have been concerns for a lack of personal touch that's inherent in online learning. But again, at the same time, the students polled said, yeah, but our teachers were, and these are the adjectives they used, available, flexible, adaptable, understanding, invested, committed. And we're actually more in touch with them now than when we saw them face to face, right? Through the forum, through synchronous webinars, through the email, etc. So this led me, guys, to reflect on this quote from an interview that I read a while back that said, yeah, new technologies generate opportunities to make learning memorable, but the essence of teaching is in face-to-face interaction. And it would be lovely to have the opportunity to discuss this with you. But you know what? Pre-COVID, I probably would have agreed with this totally. But post-COVID, and also after 10 years of experience teaching in fully online masters, I'm not so sure, because you know what? Again, to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, I personally can use the exact same methodologies that I use face-to-face with my students. For example, I use the jigsaw procedure. Are you familiar with it in cooperative learning? I can do that beautifully through Zoom breakout rooms. Loved it. Second, I had my doubts, but after teaching online so much, I found I can create the exact same kind of report because I'm more in touch with them than when I saw them face-to-face. And third, I can actually monitor their work more closely. And because everything they post is saved for my subsequent supervision. So you know what? Again, being a little bit of a devil's advocate, if properly done, if the right ingredients are tossed into the mix, online teaching can be a success story. Just wanted to be controversial there for a sec. Okay, finally, I promised y'all how to access all the stuff in addition to the info pack and the QR codes. And let me share that with you. Everything that I've mentioned is going to be made available very soon. It's not out yet, but very soon, as open educational resources. The questionnaire that you have in the info pack and the materials that I've given you the QR code for. If you're interested in the projects, you can also check out a Powtoon that we have online and leaflets with extra information, okay? And the Adibe app is a-coming really, really soon for the personalized diagnosis of teacher training needs. The online pedagogical video guides, the CLIL pills, the TikTok-ish videos, they're already on our YouTube channel and on our webpage. And as you can see, top-notch figures in CLIL have recorded them. So we get the advice straight from the horse's mouth. And all this can be found on our webpage, okay, which is adibeproject.com. Of course, we're also on social media, yeah? So you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and also on YouTube, where you will find the CLIL pills. So bottom line here, stay tuned, because lots of fresh stuff is a-coming, okay? All right, so let's see how we're doing for time. Awesome. Let's wrap it up, shall we, to use a real English phrasal verb, yeah? In this past 40 minutes, we have addressed 3 overarching objectives, 7 specific goals, and 15 frequently asked questions. Not too shabby, huh? No está mal. I hope to have provided you with food for thought on this score. And let's see if that has been the case. This is the time where I toss it back to you and I run some questions by you. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's hit it. Tell me, was CLIL elitist in the past? Yes, it was, and that's fine. We have to come to terms with it, be able to cope with that. But what about now? Are CLIL and non-CLIL groups increasingly homogeneous? You bet they are. We have found this across the board in hundreds of randomly selected schools. Are differences in terms of key variables, like rural-urban context, socioeconomic status, type of school, less marked, less conspicuous in CLIL than in non-CLIL? They absolutely are. CLIL is acting as a leveler, remember. And can CLIL work even in Latina and Isnayos? Yes, if properly done, it absolutely can. And people, the most important question of all, are you ready? Are you walking away with a few further ideas to step up to the challenge of diversity in CLIL? Well, then my job here is done, right? Okay. And I'm going to extract for you, before I wrap it up, the 5 final broader takeaways from the entire talk, okay? Not just question by question. First, as Taylor Swift aptly put it, haters gonna hate, hate, hate. But as she said in the very same song, we gotta shake it off. We gotta ensure that we overcome el fenómeno del cuñadismo with research, and that we stop harping on the elitist, segregationist nature of CLIL and shift our attention to setting in place measures that will ensure it works equally well with over and underachievers alike. Second takeaway, let me just throw out my Spanish pride here for a sec. Remember that we should feel really proud that Spain is really conspicuous on the CLIL diversity map. We have one of the most diversity-sensitive bilingual education systems. Yes, it's challenging, but we're also making a difference. And we have to remember also that what we've got is not going to cut it, okay? We need to do something different. As Henry Ford put it, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got. And we have to shake things up, yeah? We have to update and upgrade and upscale what we're working with so we make everything related to diversity in CLIL more dynamic and impactful. Learning from the best practices of others is a great way to do this, and I've signposted different takeaways from diverse countries that we can usefully adapt to our own context by tweaking them as necessary. And finally, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. The going will get tough when you're coping with diversity, I'm not going to lie. But remember when it does, that we saw here today that there's still faith, and that we now have experience and instruments that I've shared with you, and commitment and empirical evidence to ensure that we keep this show on the road and make CLIL a reality for all, yeah? So on that exciting road that you still have ahead towards diversity in CLIL, I'm not gonna lie, the road is not gonna look like this. Straight out into the horizon without any obstacles or hurdles, sorry. Sometimes it's gonna look like this. A hot mess. Most of the time it's going to look like this, okay? With its twists and turns and ups and downs, which, hey, will make the journey all the more exciting, okay? So on that exciting journey that you have ahead, this is you and us, okay? Remember that we've got what it takes to ensure, to use real English expressions, that we kill it, crush it, or slay it, para abordarlo. So people, own it, pisad fuerte. Because we set CLIL in motion, right? We've got the vaccine. All we're going to need now are the booster shots to ensure we keep this show on the road, okay? So I wish you all the best for that exciting road. I hope our paths meet again. And until then, I thank you so much. It's been so lit to work with you. And I remain at your disposal. Thank you.
Do we have like 2 minutes, 3 minutes for questions? If you have any question for Marisa.
You can scan the booklet and the PowerPoint from here, okay? If you're interested.
Anyone?
Yes, please.
The most common complaint I hear about CLIL from talking
Okay, great question. Yeah, we get that a lot. I would respond again with empirical evidence. I would say two things. First, evidence has shown that especially in the long term, is when the effects of CLIL would be felt. So I would tell the parent, okay, yeah, it might be crazy, but wait it out because it's going to make a difference and it's going to be worth it. And second, it's also been shown that especially in high-stakes achievement tests at the end of the compulsory block of education, that in the end, regardless of the language in which they learn the subject, they master the contents. So stick it out, wait it out, it's worthwhile would be my answer. My pleasure. Yes, please.
Has there been research regarding students with educational needs and disabilities in CLIL classrooms?
Yep, very interesting. Not so much in Europe, so that is like a major niche that still needs to be filled. So if you're interested in doing research, I highly encourage you to explore that avenue. But in Canada, especially, spearheaded by Fred Genesee, there have been quite a few studies, and they have all proved that at-risk learners and learners with severe and not so severe learning disabilities can thrive in CLIL scenarios. And there are quite a few also TFMs, end of master's dissertations, which are being carried out in our immediate context, especially focusing on things like dyslexia, which are also having very positive results. So it's as yet unexplored in our European context, but if we can extrapolate from others, it can work indeed. Yeah, the results are quite positive. Yes?
I have a question about time, because a lot of the new methodologies, they require a lot more teacher time commitment. Is there, and I agree with what you were saying about how teachers can definitely do it, but in spite of administrators, but without more time, do you think that's sustainable?
I think we're getting there. You're totally right. I think, especially in a context like Spain, we used to learn a lot through what I call bulimic learning, where it's very teacher-fronted. We throw out huge amounts of information for our students to memorize and regurgitate, and that was like our default mode. So shifting to student-centeredness took extra time because we weren't used to it, right? But I think now we're getting there. The Bologna process since 2010 has helped us sort of shift our mindset to more student-centeredness also in this context. So they're increasingly well-versed. I think the way to go is to train teachers. Once they're familiar, they're well-versed, they know how to implement them, I don't think time is an issue. It's just a regular part. Student-centered methodologies become invisible, right? Sort of like new technologies. They used to be very distinctive, but now they're just a regular part of our teaching. We take them for granted. So if we are there in that shift through teacher training, it shouldn't be more time-consuming than any other type of methodology. That's my take.
Thank you so much, Marisa. Thank you so much, everyone. Well, we give you a big clap.
Thank you.
Very inspiring indeed. Sarah, students, you need to go back to your class. I'm sorry. The rest of you just remain a little bit seated because I'll just tell you what we do next. Thank you. Did you like it? Yeah. Okay. We will have a break now for half an hour, well, for 25 minutes. You can join us at the cafeteria. Okay, everyone? There's a cafeteria here, and we will have our break, for coffee break.